Okay, so for section 2.3, we're going to be graphing equations of lines. We're going to be doing this a couple of different ways. But your essential question that you should be able to answer with your summary is, how do I graph equations in standard form? So first let's talk about some of the more familiar forms of lines that you know. The first one is slope-intercept form. And that's any equation that's in the form y equals mx plus b. That's the equation for a line. M represents the slope of your line, which is the number that is in front of x. And b represents the y-intercept. So that's the point where it crosses the y-axis. Now let's say we're trying to graph an equation that's in slope-intercept form. So they want you to graph the equation y equals negative 2/3 x minus 1. So let's look at our steps right here, and then we'll go ahead and graph it. So first what you want to do is you want to identify which number is the y-intercept, and you want to put it on the graph. So in this case, our y-intercept is the number in place of b, which would be negative 1. So we're going to put that on the graph. Okay, then step 2 is to identify the slope. So if we look at which number is in the place of m, it would be negative 2/3. And then what you do is you'll start at the y-intercept. You'll start at negative 1 on the y-axis, and then you move up or down, depending on if it's positive or negative, and then you move to the right. And then you can repeat the process as many times as you want to make your points. And then you're just going to draw a line. So let's go ahead and try that again. I'm going to write the equation over here again so that you know what it is while we're doing this. So y equals negative 2/3 x minus 1 is what we're graphing. Go back up here and double check that. Yep. Okay, so we're supposed to start at the y-intercept first. So our y-intercept we said was negative 1. So we're going to go to the y-axis at negative 1 and we're going to plot a point. Okay, then we're going to do our slope, which is the rise over run. So because it's negative, our rise is down. And then we're going to go right 3. So we're going to start here and we're going to go down 2 and right 3 and plot our point. And we can do that again, down 2, right 3. Now I can also continue the pattern going this way. So I can also go up 2 and left 3 to keep it going. And then I'm just going to draw my line. So I want to make sure I have arrows on both ends of my line. And I'm going to draw it right through those points. And there you go. So that's pretty simple. That's a review, so most of you guys will know how to do that. Let's try another one though. Let's try y equals 2/5 x plus 4. So it's the same process. We need to start at our y-intercept, and the y-intercept would be 4. Whoops, forgot to change tools. So the y-intercept is 4. So we're going to go to the y-axis at 4 and plot a point. And then we have 2/5 as our slope. So we would go up 2, right 5. And notice I'm always going to the right whether my slope is positive or negative. So that's something to pay attention to. Now, after that, you can continue your pattern. So this time I'll go down 2 and left 5. But the only time you ever go left is just to continue your pattern, not to actually start your line. So then I'm going to make my line through the points. And there you go. Okay, so we already talked about the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So knowing that, we're going to graph this next equation and compare it with the graph of y equals x. So we've got this graph, and then we're going to graph this one and compare them. So first, I'll do one in one color and one in the other so we can tell what we're doing. So let's start with red. We have y equals x plus 3. So my y-intercept is 3, and so I'm going up to 3 on the y-axis. So that's my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. Then if I look, there's not a number in front of my x, so my slope in this case is 1, but I like to make it into a fraction, so it's going to be 1 over 1. So from that point, I'm going to go up 1, right 1. You can do this as many times as you want. And I'm going to draw a line through those points. I'm going to make this one red so we can see it. Okay. Then I'm going to graph the line y equals x. So I'm going to do this one in blue so we can tell the difference. If I'm graphing y equals x, what is my y-intercept in that equation? I have y equals x. Is there any number at the end? No. So I can write plus 0 at the end because that doesn't change my equation at all. So then my y-intercept is going to be 0. So I'm going to start at 0. And then if I look at my slope is also the same as last time, 1 over 1. So I'm going to go up 1, right 1. And then I'm going to make my line. I'll make this one blue. So it said to compare the graph of y equals x plus 3 with the graph of y equals x. So if we look at these, what do you notice about them? Okay, they have the same slope. They both have the slope of y equals 1x, which is just 1, slope of 1. And then they also have different y-intercepts. So this one is just 3 units above this one. That's really the only difference. And I wrote that down here for you guys to see too. So they both have a slope of 1, but this one has a y-intercept of 3, and the other one had a y-intercept of 0. So in your homework questions, when it asks you to compare those, what you're going to do is just compare the slopes and the y-intercepts, basically. All right, now we're going to get into standard form. Now, this is one that you guys may not be as familiar with. So we're going to graph these equations in standard form. Now, a standard form equation looks like ax plus by equals c. And then a, b, and c are all just numbers. But you're going to have x and y on the same side. That's how you can tell that it's in standard form. So if x and y are on the same side, it's an equation in standard form. Now we know that the y-intercept is the point where it crosses the y-axis. So the x-intercept is a point where the line crosses the x-axis. So it's important to know what those mean so that you can understand what you're doing. So now let's say I want to graph an equation that's in standard form. Okay, there's a couple of ways that you can do this, but I'm going to show you a way called graphing intercepts. So if a line is in standard form where x and y are on the same side, what you can do is you can find the x and y intercepts of that equation and then just graph those 2 points and draw your line between them. So to find the intercepts, if you think about it, let's say we have just a normal graph. Here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis. Okay, this line, the y-axis, represents 0. Okay, and so let's just say this is the point, let's just make up, this is the point 0, 3. So on the y-intercept, x is equal to 0. And then on the x-axis, let's say that I have another point over here. Let's say this is the point 5, 0. That is where y equals 0. So if I plug in 0 for x and find y, then that will be the y-intercept. And if I plug in 0 for y, and then I find what x equals, that will be the x-intercept. So we can do that in our equations to find out what those are. So first we're going to find the x-intercept by plugging in 0 for y. So we're going to use this equation, 5x plus 2y equals 10, and we're going to plug in 0 for y. So I would get 5x plus 2 times 0, equals 10. Now what is 2 times 0? It's 0, right? Well, if I add 0 to anything, it doesn't change it. So I'm basically just going to say that that doesn't matter. So then I get 5x equals 10. And if I divide by 5, I get that x equals 2. So what I did was I plugged in 0 for y, and I got 2 for x. So what that means is my x-intercept is the point 2, 0, because this is what I plugged in for y, and this is what I got for x. So you have to write them in order, x, y. Okay, next I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to identify the y-intercept by plugging in 0 for x. So I'm plugging in 0 for x this time. So I'm going to look back up at my original equation. I have 5x plus 2y equals 10. So I have 5 times x, which this time I'm going to plug in 0 for x, plus 2y equals 10. Well, 5 times 0 is just 0, so that pretty much just goes away. So I have 2y equals 10. So then if I divide by 2, I get y equals 5. So now, when I plugged in 0 for x equals 0, I got 5 for y. So my intercept, my y-intercept is going to be the point 0, 5, because this is what I plugged in for x, this is what I got for y. So now what I can do is I can just graph those 2 points and then draw my line between them, because I just need 2 points to make a line. So let's see, I have 2, 0, and 0, 5. So 2, 0 would be right here, and 0, 5 would be right here. And then I just draw my line between them. And there you have it. So, the way that you guys might have learned previously to graph these would maybe be to change your standard form equation into slope-intercept form by solving for y. But this is just another way that you can do it without having to solve for y. Okay, a horizontal line is an equation in the form y equals a number. So for example, if I had y, oh, I forget to do that. Let's see, if I had y equals -1, that would be the equation for a horizontal line, which goes from side to side like this. So let's delete this line so we don't get confused. There we go. Okay. And then the equation in the form x equals a number is for a vertical line. So vertical lines go, let's see, grab my line tool again, this direction. So that would be like something like x equals 2. That would be a vertical line. So let's practice graphing some of those. So we're going to graph the equations y equals 2 and x equals -3. So y equals 2. Let's label these y-axis and x-axis so we can see the difference. If I'm graphing y equals 2, I go up to 2 on the y-axis and I put a point. And then I'm going to draw a horizontal line across because y equals is for horizontal lines. Now let's say that you don't remember that, just right off the top of your head. If you make a chart, and you know that y is always equal to 2, let's just plug in some numbers for x, just random numbers. If I was to graph these points, 0, 2, 1, 2, and 2, 2, they would make a horizontal line. So in case you ever forget, you can always make a chart and plug in the numbers. So if I want to do x equals negative 3, x is always equal to negative 3, and this time I'm going to make up my y values. So if I go to the x-axis at negative 3, that would be over here, and I should be able to graph these points, and I should see that it makes a vertical line, because x equals is for vertical lines. So I have negative 3, 0, negative 3, 1, and negative 3, 2. And there you go. They make a vertical line. So if you ever forget which one is horizontal and which one is vertical, just remember that you can do the charts to help you out. All right, be sure to write a 1 to 2 sentence summary that answers your essential question from the beginning, and you should be set.